Excellent. Welcome everyone to the pre-PA advising session. So tonight we have our presenters. So we have Dr. Brian Merkel, who is chair and professor in the human biology department, and our special guest, Emily Jadin, who is a graduate of GB. I won't, like I said, she can share more info about her background, and she is a PA with Aurora Baycare. So without further ado, like I said, I'll remind you students, again, keep yourself muted. If you have questions, throw it in the chat, and then I'll pull those up accordingly when we get to those topics. Thanks so much, and take it away, Brian.
Thank you, Carla. Hey, everybody. It's really great to be with all of you. So we've been doing these for a number of years now. So we start with the advising session, the pre-PA advising session, and I couldn't be more thrilled to have a former UW Green Bay student that we all remember really, really well. And then Emily will talk about when she graduated, and she's done so well. She was just a really great student. She has so many insights to share with you in terms of how you can be successful in this career. And so why don't I just introduce Emily right away? So please, Emily, if you could just maybe say a couple things just when you graduated and where you are now.
Yeah, so I graduated UWGB May of 2021, which feels like yesterday, and then took a gap year because the application process is an entire year long if you actually think about it. So I took that year in between graduation and starting school to apply and do my interviews, and then I started PA school May of 2022. And that went until May of 2024, which was just this past spring. And then I took my boards right away, like a month later, passed my boards, and then started my job like a week or two after that. And I'm currently with Aurora Baycare Gynecologic Oncology Surgery. So we're like a surgical specialty. We don't do really any of the chemo or radiation for cancer patients, but we take care of all of the surgery for them and then all their surveillance visits and that kind of stuff. And that's where I am now. I forgot to say I went to PA school at Carroll University, which is in Milwaukee, Waukesha area, right by Milwaukee. So yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Emily. So
Mhm.
let's begin. So, it's there's some interesting and I think that's why it's good all of you are here. So, Emily, just to confirm, were you a health science emphasis person?
Yeah. So health science emphasis, which basically covered everything.
Right. And then there are schools though that don't require physics, and if you are a health science emphasis student, you are then required to take a year of physics. So I think we can get into this as we go because we do have the general emphasis too, but you're really, you have to be very diligent about making sure that with that emphasis, you are actually taking all the classes you need in terms of prereqs that are going to help you get into PA school. So we'll come back to that as we go, but generally it's the health science emphasis. Um, Face-to-face lab requirements, probably next year I might take that off because with COVID, right, there were some changes in the requirements in terms of face-to-face kinds of things. And so at this point, certainly face-to-face labs are required. Let's see, prereqs not required in the major. A&P 2 semesters, which is Human Bio 240 and 241. And so that's Amanda Nelson. Dr. Nelson teaches the lecture. And then there's many instructors that teach the lab sections, 241. And in the past, we would always recommend, because it's a 2 semester requirement, and Human Bio 240, 241 comes to 5 credits. And how do you get that extra physiology requirement? And we would always recommend Human Phys lecture, which is 402, and the lab, which is 403. But we now have 2 semester sequence opportunities for all of you to take, We have them at the partner campuses and on the Green Bay main campus starting spring 2026. We will actually, and this is probably new for Emily because this was not around when she was here. We will actually, everywhere you go, all campuses for Green Bay, there will be a 2-semester A&P lecture and lab experience. Psychology 1 semester is something generally you're looking at medical terminology for Marquette and a program that's going to be coming online fairly soon. And Emily has all those kinds of details too that will give her lots of opportunities to talk about all that good stuff at the Medical College of Wisconsin. So some highly recommended courses, and there's no better person, honestly. I mean, I'm going to just share some things that I'm familiar with, but Emily she's the best person here to talk about this nutrition, immunology, advanced micro, which has a research experience built into it called Tiny Earth, and additional site courses. So Emily, feel free, your experience, what do you think would be good for students to take?
Yeah, so I don't know what the new A&P sequence really entails, like as far as what you're learning in that, but from experience, the A&P doing the 240 and the 402 was so beneficial. I mean, it's required, like you have to have some sort of anatomy and physiology, but especially 402, that class, even though I took it as a
Mm.
sophomore at GB, it carried me throughout the first semester of PA school. I was really struggling to adjust to how to study in PA school versus what I was doing at GB. And I was really relying on all of that like that knowledge that I learned in Dr. Brusich's class, but I think Dr. Nelson teaches it now, maybe.
She does. Yep. She's
Um,
teaching it this semester, in fact,
yeah.
Emily. Yeah.
So that class extremely carried me. So I would recommend that sequence just from my own personal experience. And I don't know what the new one has, but I know that schools do accept. I know it was a question for me when I was applying. Will they take this with it being an A&P combined course for one of the like semesters and then the just physiology for the second, but they accept it and for sure do both the labs. Labs for all the schools usually need to be in person, just like Dr. Merkel said. Um,
Yeah. And
Otherwise,
this is, yeah,
sorry.
I'm sorry, Emily. The other thing too, just to share on the heels of what you just said, if some of you are also thinking about pre-med, and I would certainly encourage you to go to Dr. Hireman's session on that too. But physiology is extremely important there as well, because so much of this is physiology based, right? And when we talk about medicine, so it makes sense whether it's PA or MD, these courses are really important. So thanks for that.
Yeah. And the first semester of PA school, usually regardless of the school you're at, is highly focused in anatomy and physiology. And it's awful. It's fine. I don't, that's my least favorite semester of PA school. I don't know. It was probably a combination of just like learning how to be in PA school, but yeah, you definitely need those prereqs for that one. But
Yeah.
otherwise, compared to what was on the screen, a lot of the schools don't require too many crazy prereqs, but definitely make sure you're looking at each school's website to make sure you're hitting the marks. Because some of them even have like English courses requirements. But I made a spreadsheet for everyone that we'll eventually get to, you guys.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the slide, Emily, because you touched on something that could be a bit of a theme
Yeah.
from us to the students today, that this whole idea that, and you experienced it, and so as a result, you have this great spreadsheet that you're going to share with them, which gives all the details for all these different schools, right, and what they're looking for. But we can't emphasize that enough, all for all of you that go to the website of the school that you're interested in. And some of them will even have video clips, and we have one at the end from Madison's program. And the video clip is great because it talks about, from the director of the program, what they think makes for a really competitive applicant. And so really take heed of that good advice. So yeah, let's move on. Extracurricular activities. I have in quotations underneath one of the things, whether it's MD, PA, PT, PharmD, what have you, it's sustained participation. What the heck does that mean? That means whatever you join, really sink your teeth into it. Don't do it for a year, or don't do it for a semester, certainly, but over a length of time, sustained participation, demonstrate leadership, come up with ideas as a leader, and have the organization get involved in something that's really interesting and special as a service to the community, just as an example. Those are the things that programs look at. I think all too often, when I'm writing letters of recommendation for students, they'll give me their resumes and things that they've done. And I get it. I understand why students may feel this way, but it's almost like they're taking a shotgun approach that I've joined 50 clubs. And then the question is almost like that becomes a negative, as crazy as that sounds, because what that looks like is how can you really contribute anything meaningful into all those clubs at the same time? So be careful of that. There's some examples of activities that you can participate in, student orgs, um, PT, AT, athletic training, physical therapy, occupational therapy club. There's pre-PA, pre-MD club, of course, that's more in line with for this particular group. Colleges Against Cancer, Tri Beta is an honor society in the biological sciences. So there's a number of groups. Make sure it's something that you think you really could contribute to in a meaningful way. I mean, that's where that all begins, I think. And then Emily really helped me out with this too. So this will help out our pre-med session as well. Patient contact hours, right? CNA, you get paid for it. Plenty of practicing healthcare providers look back on that training as some of the best things that they've ever done because you're really able to, in a very meaningful way, work with patients, help with patients. You get your hands dirty. And it really is tremendous. It's a tremendous experience because when you start as a professional, you have to be able to deal with people of all kinds of backgrounds, right? And because they need your help. And so having that experience is valuable. Being EMT, drawing blood. And then Emily, so I gave her these slides and she was really helpful because she screened them and gave some great edits and suggestions. One being, Scribed is it's not really giving you patient contact hours. It's giving you healthcare experience, which can be very good and very valuable, but there's a nuance, right? There's a difference to what those things are. So be careful about that. And then shadowing, Emily, do you want to talk about the importance of shadowing, especially with trying to get into PA school?
Yeah. Um, so I think shadowing is important for any like career that you're considering, but especially these healthcare careers, because it's really easy to glamorize something when you see
Mm,
people's like day in the lives on social media, and they're usually putting like the best part of it, and just like medical dramas and whatnot, and kind of think that you might want to do something. So shadowing is really important. I would recommend shadowing PAs. I would recommend shadowing doctors, nurse practitioners, different healthcare fields, just to kind of see if PA is actually the route you want to go. Because if you're going to be a PA, you have to really want that team environment, even though we have a ton of autonomy, and in some specialties are completely autonomous, like family medicine. In a specialty like I'm in right now, I work in team-based care where I'm working one-on-one with the physician and a nurse practitioner, and we all have our roles and we all work together. So it's a lot different than like family med. So I would recommend like going and shadowing someone in a clinic setting like family medicine, shadowing a PA in like surgery, if you can, in the ER, different types of settings, so you can kind of understand what our role is, because that can be very important once you get to the interview. A lot of schools don't put on their website that they require shadowing, but a lot of them look to that, if they don't have it on their website, as that you understand what the profession is and that you understand that this is what you want to do and that you're not going to get into it, get through it and be like, wait, I don't like this at all. So they really do look to that, especially the schools that have a more holistic application process. So definitely recommend that. I would say maybe like I would shadow maybe a week if you can, and that can be broken up. It doesn't have to be in like consecutive, but try to get a good chunk of hours and not just like a few hours, because then they can see that you've actually like done your research, you were there for enough time to fully understand. And also it benefits you because then when it is time for that letter of recommendation, you have a PA that you can say, hey, I chatted with you and they know you, because then you would have talked to them and they can write a better letter for you. So that's really what I would recommend. But also shadow other things. If you are on the fence about if PA is right for you, then definitely like shadow PT, shadow different things so you know for sure.
Yeah. And you actually said, and it'll come up a little bit later, but I think it fits here too. You know, a good question to be ready to answer in an interview is why not MD? Why not this? Why PA specifically? And you better be prepared to give very good detailed reasons why.
Yeah, they love to ask that question. It's usually the questions that they ask are, tell me about yourself, is always like the first question in any interview, I feel like. Why our school? Why PA? And then a lot of times, why, if they on the same line as that one, why PA and not doctor? Why PA and not nurse practitioner? So understanding
Mm.
what our colleagues in healthcare do is also important.
That's terrific advice. Thanks, Emily. Becoming a CNA, you have to be certified. So there's a link here at NWTC. This is something that they offer. So if you go to the link, it'll ask you for the semester you're interested in going through the training there, and a keyword. They'll ask for a keyword in your search. Type in nursing assistant, and you should get to where you want to be for this. Some curricular, extracurricular activities. So I think what you're going to see as human biology majors is that there are more what we call course-based undergraduate research experiences. These are called cures. And so Tiny Earth is one, and essentially it's a semester-long research experience that's and Emily did this, which is really cool. It's an antibiotic discovery research experience. There's going to be others that other professors are going to start teaching as well. And one of the nice things about these is that they're scalable. So it's great if you can get an independent study, but we have a lot of majors in human biology, and it's true for any university. It's not just UW Green Bay. Cures are only becoming more and more popular because research and the value that research brings to the professional development, academic development of a student, it's very clear. It's just there's so much mentoring that goes on during a research experience and so many other things that are of value that it's almost like an unwritten rule that these and explicitly, not just unwritten. And you can again always go to the website, but these experiences are really important. And one of the nice things, if you're thinking about healthcare, right, about the Tiny Earth experience, is that there's a public health crisis affecting the planet right now, and it's antimicrobial resistance to antibiotics. And so, you know, there's that. It's a good cure for you to be in if you're thinking about this kind of career. There's summer research opportunities. Spurs one. We have many here. You can be a Sandmeyer Scholar. There's applications that have gone out this fall where you can get some money. You can get paid over the summer. We know that students work, and you know that's a real challenge in many cases. And so, in an effort to try to provide students and an incentive to do this, it's a paid opportunity. You get to work with faculty in human biology in the summer. be an undergraduate TA. I have to admit, I mean, I did some of it. I shouldn't be so black and white with my own stuff, honestly. But I would say overall, I think there were more faculty that were doing it than I was. And now I have a TA for immunology every semester. I have a TA for advanced micro every semester. And what's great about it is it's a really good leadership opportunity for college students. You get to know an instructor even more. Their letter of recommendation is going to be more informed of what they can say about you, which is really beneficial to admissions groups and the rest. So really look for those kinds of things. Dr. Hireman offers a lot of those things. Dr. Kibbe does. I do. There's TA opportunities in the lab sections of A&P too. Cadaver dissection, Emily, if we want to talk about this, but Dr. Nelson, I know it's Dr. Nelson, Dr. Marker, but I mean, you have an opportunity over an entire semester to go through human anatomy. I mean, it's such a, the faculty student ratio it's great. I mean, it's just a small group of people and you get all this incredible expertise and experience. So Emily, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I'm really happy I got the opportunity to do the cadaver dissection. And I did it during my gap year, actually. No, I think it was the semester before. I don't know. I did it at the end sometime, but it was
Yeah.
great because during the summer semester of PA school, you do a dissection, but I feel like they don't walk you through it like I was walked through it at GB, which is like I can imagine would be super intimidating for a lot of my classmates. It was like day one, what are we doing here? So to have that knowledge and to have that extra bit of anatomy practice beforehand, it was extremely helpful when it came to PA school later on. So I definitely recommend it.
Okay, thank you. So Emily, this is new. We now have a travel course. We have this great international partnership with a medical program in Thailand. It's in Bangkok. And so this is fantastic 2-week course we'll probably offer every January. Um, we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's every other January, but um, medical programs, PA, MD, this is for everybody, any human bio major. So this is community healthcare systems in Thailand. It's just not MD. It's really designed to put you in a position to interact with patients, get to know the medical system in Thailand. And so I think that's a terrific opportunity for students looking to do these kinds of things. Standardized test. I know Emily has a lot to say about this. Do you want to take this over, Emily? I don't want to.
Yeah.
You're going to be more effective and better. You're going to give them better information. So take it away.
Sure. So they're not fun. That's all I can say. But the GRE, there's 3 main standardized tests: GRE, PA-CAT, and Casper. PA-CAT's really, really new. I wrote it myself a note because it wasn't really a thing when I applied, but it kind of was. It's new as of May of 2020. So when I applied in 2021, not many schools were using it because it was so new. And now a couple more schools are either adding it as an option instead of the GRE, or they are replacing the GRE completely. So you really have to, again, check the school's website. It's the reoccurring theme.
Yeah.
But if they do require one of these standardized tests, you have to look into it. The GRE, I'll start there. It's non-specific. It's not going to cover anything you're learning in your undergrad career, which is not fun. It's one section is math, the other section is a bunch of like language or verbal, a lot of vocab word type of stuff. And then there's a writing section. The schools usually look at the math and the vocab sections, and then they score it, and the scoring system's kind of weird. You'd have to look it up, but basically the benchmark is to get a 300. So basically the verbal is going to be 150 would be your basically your benchmark, and then the math section 150 would be your benchmark. I think it's scored like 130 to 170. Basically you just want to get in the 50th percentile, and that's basically, it's another hoop to jump through, meet the benchmark. Obviously if you do really, really good and your GPA is lower and they see that you really excelled on this and did amazing, that's gonna like bump them up when you're looking at your application. They'd be like, okay, so they really studied for this and they're able to put in the work and get a high test score. Then again, some people don't do good at standardized tests and it's just awful. So there's that too. But studying materials for the GRE, there's Kaplan and like Princeton Review and all of that stuff. I found that using like the big textbooks was not for me. I couldn't bring myself to sit there and go through that. It was just, I couldn't do it. So I ended up getting Magoosh, which was online. It was really reasonably priced. And then there was like mini videos and then practice problems. And that was the best thing for me because I would watch the little video, which was way better than me sitting and reading. And then I'd do the practice problems. And then there's like a bunch of practice tests. So that's what I would recommend. And then I know a lot of people in like pre-PA chats recommend that Greg Mat. I've not personally used it, but a lot of people really recommend that. But other things about the GRE, it's a little expensive. It's $220. Your scores are usually there about a week after. And then while you're sitting in the GRE taking your test, it will prompt you to send your scores for free to some schools. So make sure you kind of have an idea, if you can, to save yourself money, where you'd want your scores sent to. You get 4 schools for free if you do it right away. Otherwise, it's $35 per school. So really try to know where you want them sent if you are taking it and you know. Otherwise, the scores are valid for 5 years. So I took the GRE this like while right after graduation. So 2021, the year I was applying. I wouldn't recommend that. I was super duper stressed trying to graduate, trying to do my CASPA application, trying to do all the things. And since the GRE has nothing to do with what you're learning in college, why stress yourself out and do it all at the end? I would completely recommend do this over like earlier, maybe a year or 2 before you're planning to apply, because your scores are good for 5 years, so you still have a good buffer. And do it like during Christmas break or summer break or sometime when you're not stressed out, because it's just don't be me. Don't be freaking out and trying to study and then paying to like I got really nervous because I didn't study enough. So then I redid my test date, canceled it and rescheduled. That's the word I'm trying to look for. And that costs money. And I'm just like, whatever, I'd rather just reschedule it. Don't be me. Do it early.
It's terrific advice, Emily. Yes. All right. Let's move ahead. So letters of recommendation, we alluded to some of this a little bit ago, but you're going to need 3, one from a faculty member, that's your academic reference, a PA, and thank you, Emily, for this. I thought this was extremely helpful, some of these additions. One from a PA, and that's a reference for your understanding of the profession. And then a place of employment, a supervisor, which can talk about your character. How do you request a letter? That's the beauty of these sessions, right? And my only frustration is I just want everybody to come that's looking at this because I know how valuable they are. So kudos to all of you for joining us. So too often we have students that just they really struggle with this. How do I do it? Little o' me, am I worthy of getting a letter? If you can think about what this means when you're a freshman, right? We now have this professions course for human bio majors to try to help them as early as possible, but it's getting to know faculty, scheduling appointments with your faculty mentor, shadowing PAs, right? Emily talked about it. You want to have a lot of interaction with any given PA so that they can write an informed letter. It's always an informed letter. That's really important. So the more classes you have with a faculty member, if you've done research with that faculty member, if you're a TA for one of their classes, right? Those are individuals that can write you really helpful letters. This is from the CASPA site. Emily, I know, can say a lot about the value of the CASPA website, but there's a service for people like me that are being asked to write letters. And so here is the reference form. If you're thinking about becoming a PA and you have me down as a reference, I will get something like this online, and right away you can know how you're being evaluated. So the one that I always love talking about is reaction to criticism. And the other thing I would always say about this to students, because I show this quite a bit, I show this in every single class I teach now, including that professions class. But I would have done poorly on all these things. I was a very defensive student, just across the board. It was just a bit of a mess. But that's kind of part of why I want to make sure that students are in the best position to be successful. Because if you look at these are almost all these things are choices you can make throughout college. Things that courses you take, organizations you join, being a TA, because you're aware of what your strengths and limitations are. And so you want to do certain things so you can improve. Right? That's self-awareness, and that's one of these items on this list here. That's why self-awareness is so important, because it speaks to your connection to how you work. Do you really have a very good grasp of uh, what your strengths and weaknesses are? That's where everything begins, because once you have that and you have a growth mindset and you're intentional about the choices you make, um, you're going to score really well on all these things. And I think you're going to find if you're intentional about the things you do throughout college, it will help you in the interview, because being intentional and not just being you're someone that reacts to things. That's the way I was in college. It's like, I don't know. Someone told me to take this class. Someone told me to take that. And that's not where you want to be. You want to be intentional. You want to be really mindful about everything that you're doing in college, so that the time you get to an interview, your personal statement makes sense, why you're applying to PA school, your responses in that interview make sense, all those kinds of things. So, Emily, I don't know if you want to say anything about that, but
The
happy to let you
thing,
share.
yeah, I would say the biggest thing is, I mean, for me, I feel like if you're involved and people kind of know you and see how hard you're working, a lot of times you don't even have to ask for the letter. They will offer to write you a letter, which is really nice. But obviously, if you have to ask, that's fine too. But make sure that they really know you, and make sure if they aren't asking to write you a letter and you're not sure if they're going to rate you highly or highly recommend you, don't have them do it, because it's only going to look bad on your end. Because then the admissions committee, if they just recommend you instead of highly recommend you, they're going to be like, well, what are we missing? Why didn't they highly recommend this person? So really think about if that person really knows you, and, you know, be careful about who you pick for your letter writing. That's
Yeah.
the biggest thing, because usually it will help you boost your application. You just don't want it to, for some reason, hurt you, because you sign a thing, you don't see what they write or say about you, and it all goes through CASPA.
Yeah. And getting back to this reaction to criticism thing, that's the whole growth mindset idea. Are you a combative student like me? We frame that as someone who has a fixed mindset. Sometimes we get explanations for how we're supposed to fill out these forms. And with the reaction to criticism question, I've seen cases where it's do not rate the student as excellent unless they actually seek out feedback. It's okay if you have a student, it's great if you have a student that loves the feedback, isn't affected by it, really sees it as an opportunity to grow, but better yet, a student that doesn't wait for you. That whole concept would have been totally foreign to me in college. But for the reasons mentioned, it's people that want to grow, they're looking to grow. It's really important. So something to think about for everybody. Application preparation, you mentioned the CASPA website and system that's in place for pre-PAs. The cycle begins late April. Um, I had down in bold, CASPA website is a great resource. And when I shared this with Emily, she's like, yes, it is a great resource. So make sure you look at that, right? For pre-meds, it's AMCAS. There's so much great information that AMCAS has for pre-meds, CASPA has for all of you thinking about this great career. Some schools require secondary applications. These are essays essentially looking at why should the school interview you. General advice, know what your target schools want as early as possible. So always go to the website, right? That's a recurring theme, as Emily said. So some timelines. Emily, I'm going to let you take this over if you don't mind, because I think you've got such a great handle on this and what the challenges are too.
Yeah. So I kind of like, I didn't see that this slide once you changed it. I kind of like that. No, it's good both ways. Never mind. Um, so essentially, like I said before, the application cycle takes a year. From the time CASPA opens in April, when you start school will be that next April, May. Some schools do start in December, January, but usually it's like a May start, depends on the school. So you do have that year where you're applying, but it goes really, really fast. So when CASPA opens in April, I usually recommend that you have all of your ducks in a row and you are ready to submit as soon as possible. So what does that mean? That's making sure you've already reached out to people for letters of rec so that they are aware, and then you set a goal with them. So I would say, hey, once they already agreed to be your letter writer, say, hey, I was hoping that I could have my letter by XYZ date. And make that date, give yourself an extra buffer, tell them a little bit before you actually need it to submit. Don't tell them the day that you're planning to submit because
That's
they
a big one.
they have their own lives. They're extremely busy. So sometimes things fall through the cracks. So tell them and give yourself a buffer. And if they don't get back to you by that time, don't feel bad reaching out. It's usually never that they don't want to write it. It's usually that they forgot, they got busy. They definitely want to write your letter. So please reach out to them because life gets really overwhelming. Then GRE scores, I would say, like I said before, do that beforehand. Don't wait till June like I did or July, like it says on here. Do that before. The thing like Casper was one of the other tests. Those have a special deadline for each school. So you're going to have to look at the school website. And that standardized test is only good for one application cycle. So that one you'll have to do when the cycle opens, most likely. Personal statement, I would recommend starting it if I could go back in time. I would recommend starting it in like winter, like January, because it takes a really long time. I don't know why it's so hard to write about yourself. It's just, it really is. That was the thing that held me up on my application, and I submitted it a little later than I wanted to. So I would recommend at least brainstorming and getting some ideas on paper and then have it ready for when CASPA opens. And then as far as deadlines on CASPA, you'll see those when you go in and you'll see them on the school's website. Some of them start usually like August 1st is the earliest, but they can go, I think Madison's is pretty late. So they can go into like November. So it really depends on the school, but some schools have rolling admissions, which means as soon as they're if the cycle opens in April and people start submitting, they start reviewing those applications and they start sending out interview invites and filling up their class. So you want to be on the early end just to make sure you give yourself the best chance possible. I would shoot for like June, July at the latest, like early July at the latest, to really give yourself a good shot. But obviously, if the cycle's still open and you want to apply, don't wait just because you feel like you're late. You still have a chance, a pretty good chance if the school's not rolling and you aren't late to their deadline. So don't not do it because I told you this. Definitely still give it a try. Doesn't hurt. And then interviews, usually the timelines, they start sending them out around September. But Madison, I know a bunch of people last application cycle reached out to me. I haven't heard from Madison. They don't send out like interview invites till like late November, December. It's crazy. So they're a late one. Each school's a little bit different, but normally it's fall. And those can go up until basically when school starts. We had a person in our class that literally got the call to join our class the day after the first day of school. Granted, the interview was a little bit prior to that, but it can go really late. And then notifications of admissions, again, like I just kind of touched on, it can be anywhere from September, from the day after your interview to when school starts, or maybe even for Heather's case, the day after school starts. And then you just kind of jump on it and you get ready to roll. But that's kind of the rough guidelines, but you really have to kind of get your ducks in a row. Open CASPA, even though you're not applying this season, open CASPA literally tonight because you can start inputting things into your CASPA application. So when it does open, you already have stuff filled out and you don't have to scramble. It takes a really long time to fill all these things out. You don't have to scramble. The only things that CASPA does not carry over. So when you fill out CASPA and then the new application cycle that you're going to submit comes in, a message will pop up and it'll say, you're a reapplicant. And you're going to freak out and you're going to be like, I didn't apply. That's fine. You didn't apply, you're not a reapplicant. It's going to say that, but you're not actually a reapplicant. You are only a reapplicant if you applied to a school in a cycle and then the next cycle comes and you apply to that same school. If that makes any sense, put in the chat if you're confused, but CASPA doesn't roll over your letter of recommendation. So don't put it in, don't request it. If you're not applying that cycle, don't do that. Your personal statement, have that saved in like a Google Drive or your computer. Don't put it in CASPA until you are completely done. It's edited and you're going to submit it off. Any other essays that CASPA requires that are like the big one, like there's a COVID essay, and then there's a new one that basically talks about any like struggles or hardships that will benefit you as an applicant. There's a new one. So any of those big essays, don't put it in there. Program materials that are specific to the school. So when you open CASPA, there will be 4 sections. And then the bottom right one is specific to each school. That resets every application cycle. So, I mean, you can look at it and see what the school is requiring, see the type of supplemental essays they ask, but don't fill that out if you're not applying because you're just wasting your time. Your time's valuable, so don't do that. I think that's most of that.
Okay, thank you, Emily. But you did say that it's the nature of how this works, being a pre-PA student, it's a challenge, right? To make sure that you are on top of everything. So I think your advice is wise. Check out CASPA as soon as possible. Okay. Does everybody see my screen?
Yes,
Okay.
so it's on the timelines slide.
Okay. Let's see, it's not advancing for some reason. I'm going to stop sharing for a second and start this over. Everybody see that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So This is something you can take a look at. I don't think we have to go through everything here. Just let's see, undergraduate major, a couple things to point out. It'll maybe say something like no preferred major. Don't go there. One of the things, this is true for pre-meds too. Um, you have to be prepared. Not only do you have this challenge of getting in, but you have to do well once you get in, right? So, make sure, and that's what the human bio major, the health science emphasis is all about, that you are as prepared as possible to do well once you get in. There's some information about courses, GPA. Here's another thing, and I know Emily could speak to this too. It's deceiving, right? You'll see things like 3.0 GPA or 3.2 GPA like Madison does, but then they'll give you the statistics for last year's class, and it was the average GPA was 3.7. So just make sure you're aware of those kinds of things. Some information about Casper, GRE. Some schools will tell you they'll be very specific about patient contact hours and numbers of hours, information about community service, letters of recommendation, etc., etc. There's a video link at the bottom. You will get a copy of this slide deck, and you can essentially, it's what makes for a competitive applicant in terms of UW-Madison's perspective. More or less looking at UW-La Crosse now, similar kinds of things. What is the mean cumulative GPA for students that entered the program? Some programs are very specific about what the overall science GPA is. So be careful of that, be aware of that. The mean age of applicants, I think that's kind of neat to take a look at that. A lot of students do take gap years. I think for a lot of GB students, in my experience, it's very shocking for them to hear, and it's almost like you feel less than for some reason. And Emily, if I could turn over the value of gap years to you, if you could say something about that, I think that would be great.
Please take your gap year. I was one of those, I kind of landed on a little too much pride of not taking the gap year, and then COVID happened, and then I had a lot of introspection about my life. And I decided after I shadowed, everyone said, just take the gap year, please take the gap year. The ones that didn't take the gap year said, I wish I would have had the gap year. And everyone that took one said it was the best thing they did. And I would agree. It was amazing. The experience that I gained in the gap year, even though that experience since CASPA opens and I submitted in the beginning of my gap year, that experience that I gained after doesn't really go towards my application. Yes, I can speak to it at my interviews or along the lines, but it doesn't really matter. That experience really helped me in PA school. It's helped me now as a practicing PA to have experience because I was a CNA in the hospital. And then I transitioned to being a medical assistant during my gap year in the clinic setting and putting in orders and actually like using Epic in that way, completely different and was so beneficial. So I love that. And just like having a moment to just do what you want to do and have a breather and like get some sleep before you jump into like the hardest 2 to 3 years of your life. I mean, I can't speak on it enough. It was the best thing I could have done for myself and my sanity, quite honestly. And it's just nice to focus on my interviews when they came instead of being like, oh, I have a test and I have this. Well, I just had to do my interview and get off of work.
Yeah.
I can't imagine how stressful that would be doing it your senior year as well. Especially as human bio majors, I know a lot of us are taking hard classes. So it's not like we're taking all these freebie classes. You're pretty stressed. So yeah, take the gap year. And then when you graduate PA school, take the summer off. Don't be me. Why did I do this? I really just jumped right into it. And I wish I would have took the summer off. All of my classmates have had the summer off and I envy them. So take those gap years, really value yourself and give yourself grace. It's really not a race. You're going to get there when you're supposed to be there.
That's terrific, Emily. Some other qualities, believe it or not, some programs will be very specific about technical standards. Madison is like that. Go to Madison's website, more information. Go to CASPA, again, that recurring theme. And I think we've talked about these other bullet points at the bottom. Other routes, nursing, nurse practitioner, take a gap year. We just talked about that. And maybe during that gap year, if you feel like it's maybe your GPA or academically, there's something that you need a case needs to be made for your capacity, your potential, how you can perform academically. Some students will get a master's degree in biomedical science, medical physiology, something like that. A lot of students approach this in different ways, but there's some connection to what a PA does, right? And courses that a PA student would take, those kinds of things. So, research, clinical employment, EMT, paramedic, CNA, medical scribe. Maybe take some classes where maybe you didn't do as well as you would have liked and you want to repeat one. I would imagine many of you are aware of this, but if you're not, if you have a C, for example, or a D, or even an F, especially if it's a high credit carrying course, that's a course you want to repeat, especially if it's in the science, even whether it's a high credit course or not, like a 4 credit or a 5 credit class. Those are GPA drains on you, right? And if you have any questions about that, happy to discuss that with you anytime. Now, this is really interesting. And I want to thank Emily for so much today, but including the updates to this, because it's kind of sad in a way, but Concordia, we've had a lot of students go there, had good experiences, and they're practicing PAs. That's no longer accredited. It's amazing to me. Emily went to Carroll. Marquette University is on probation. University of Wisconsin La Crosse is another Wisconsin school. Madison, of course. Medical College of Wisconsin, we alluded to that earlier, maybe online 2028, taking applications. So this is a former student who actually went to Concordia during the pandemic. Crazy days, right? Were you in class together, Emily? You and Haley?
I think that she was a year above me, but I think we've had maybe a class or two where we were for sure went to
Okay.
like certain like human biology events together.
Okay. Okay, that's terrific. This is something that you can just read whenever you like. This is from a former student. This is from Haley, actually. You can read it anytime. You'll get this, her perspective on things. Emily, do you want to share anything about this? Is a resource you shared with me.
Yeah, I just thought it was nice because I feel like sometimes it gets confusing when we talk, patient care experience, healthcare experience. So I thought it was nice. This is directly from CASPA. These are when you go in there to put in your activities or your experiences, you have a drop down and you have to pick from one of those sections. And they give you a good little description of what they mean for each thing. I personally feel like you are more well-rounded. I can't talk tonight. If you
It's
have
late.
something from each setting, but only if you can really talk about it at your interview and only if you're putting the time into it to make it a meaningful experience. If not, don't try to get it. Don't try to like get research experience if you're not going to really put into that and get something out of it. So kind of like we were talking about earlier, but I just think it's nice to kind of have what they think that description is so you know what you're supposed to be looking for when you're getting experiences.
Yeah, I agree. Right. You don't want to it's not just checking something, right? I'm going to check a box off, right?
Don't check the box.
Yes, invest in it.
It's all about the quality, not the quantity. Some people really try to get so many experiences that when the interviewer asks you about it, because they will ask you about the most random things, and you sit there and you can't really talk about it, it's just such a red flag. I know that I was in pep band for a little bit during undergrad, and of course they brought that up. So if it's on that application, expect to be able to talk about it.
Yeah. Now with the time that we have left, any questions? And then while we wait, in case there are
Yes, you
questions,
can raise your hand. Otherwise, if you want to, like I said, put it in the chat.
yeah.
Well, people are
Oh,
thinking.
yeah,
I
and
know
while we
the
wait,
wheels are
Emily,
spinning.
yeah, Emily, so is shadowing something students could do with you?
Yeah, for sure. Once I am fully up and running, I'm still kind of in this learning phase, but I would love to take students and have them shadow. I already have two people that are kind of waiting for me to get there, but just for sure reach out to me. It would probably be more like winter into the spring semester once I feel a little more confident on my own. But I could take you in the OR. We have some really cool cases with some giant pelvic masses. It is the craziest thing to see. We can do inpatient rounding and we can do clinic. So you kind of get the best of all of the settings, a little bit of everything.
Well, and as you said, Emily, it's really advisable, and there's a question, so great, we'll get to that in a sec, to
Yeah.
have multiple experiences, right? Because that's the amazing thing about being a PA.
Yeah.
It can be in your area, it could be family practice, it could be dermatology. There's so many areas of expertise. And for all of you, we have plenty of alumni. So if you're looking for shadowing, just let me know. So
I know.
questions, Carla, do you want to?
So there's first one that came to me directly, so I'll throw that one out first. Emily, what does your day-to-day look like at work?
Oh yeah, it's kind of different every day. So I'll go kind of through a day that kind of involves a little bit of everything. Depends if I'm in the OR that day or not. Some days are just clinic, some days are OR. But today was a little bit of everything. So I got to work today at around 7:30. We had a meeting, so I was trying to get there at 8, but we had a meeting at 7:30, but they brought food, so that's fine. Um, Sat through the meeting, and then I didn't have a patient until 9. So lucky me, I didn't have to get there before our meeting to go around on my inpatients. So I had 3 patients that had surgery yesterday that couldn't go home. So I went and I rounded on them in the hospital, made sure they were all doing good, wrote up their notes, put in all their discharge orders, and tried to get them out. Then I did clinic until about noon. So I saw patients on my own, a lot of post-op visits. And then for our cancer patients, we're seeing them pretty often to make sure that there's no reoccurrence. So I see them on my own as a PA. And then any problems, like I order things, treat, prescribe, do all the shebang when I'm in there, and then write their note. And then at 12:20, I had a case in the OR. So I went to the OR, got my patient ready, texted the doctor that everything was set up and ready. And then as a PA, am first assistant surgery. So our case was an X-lap, which is a full open belly. She had a giant ovarian mass. It was huge. It's just crazy. You get through the first layer of the belly and then it's like pops right out if things go well and it's not stuck to anything. And it's just wild to see that. So then Dr. Dixon leaves, and then she leaves me in there to close up all the belly. So then I do that, suture them all up, and then send them on off. And then tomorrow we're in Nina, so I don't have to round. But if we weren't, I would go round on that patient, inpatient again, and try to get them home. And then
Mhm.
all the like clinical work that I do on the computer when patients send like my chart messages, if people are calling in, I'm helping the nurses. Like nurses will ask me questions, I'll let them know what to say to the patient and so forth. That's kind of today was a little bit of everything. So
There's a question. Oh, go ahead, Dr. Merkel.
Oh no, yeah, please, Carla, take it over.
Oh, okay, super. So next question. I'm a senior graduating in December, looking to go back and take my prerequisites. Can I complete these at a community college, or does it look better to take them at a 4-year university?
I'll start, and I know Emily will have lots to say, but you want to take the courses at a 4-year college. I understand, but unfortunately, that's a reality. I'll turn it over quickly to Emily.
I think that's the safest answer. Otherwise, it goes back to reaching out to the school or looking on their website, because some of them will say specifically that they do or do not accept courses from community colleges. Some do, and if that's the school that you need your prereq from, then great. But if you're applying to more than one school and not all the schools allow that course from a community college, it's going to be more beneficial to just do it at the 4-year. And if you want to save yourself the headache of someone changing their
Mhm.
requirements, because it could change every year that the
Definitely.
application cycle happens, it's just probably safer to do it at the 4-year, unfortunately.
Great points. Yeah.
So, okay, how do you get to know a professor personally enough to get them to write a letter recommendation? How do you talk to them without it being awkward? What do you talk about?
So
Well,
I think how I met Dr. Hireman was basically I grabbed a friend in that class and we made up a question that we had and we just went in there and then we just talked to her about random stuff and then became besties. So I think, don't be scared of them. They're not scary people. They're the best people. And you'd be surprised when you go to talk to them. It's usually not that awkward. So I would just say
yeah,
either have a real question or make up a question and just go say hi.
I love
And
that
yeah,
advice. That's
getting involved in
great.
different things like research or um, like clubs that they're an advisor of or whatnot, you'll get to know them well.
And
Yeah,
students, you
or
have a built-in connection too, because each of you have a faculty mentor assigned to you.
Oh,
So that's a great person to start with, especially again, if you have them for classes. So there's an introduction right there. But if you don't have them for classes, then yeah, definitely take Emily's. Like,
yeah, it's really good advice. Labs are great opportunities because labs are, you don't have a lot of students. It's no more than 24. Some labs have less. And then just by design, it's a closer interaction that you have. You'll have opportunities to talk about things. And but yes, and I understand that when I was, I could still consider myself a first generation student. Can little old me go to office? What are office hours? Is it okay for me to go into a faculty's office? Exactly what this question is about. The majority of GB students are first generation students. So I really appreciate that question a great deal and get it. But there is something to, as Emily said, really just push yourself, schedule an appointment. I love this idea, right? An icebreaker. Emily had
take
a
a
built-in
friend.
icebreaker.
Take a friend.
Have something that you think you could talk about. You just, hey, I just, you know what, you want to blow your faculty advisors away? Here it is. Schedule an appointment, walk in and just say, you're my faculty mentor. I just really wanted to introduce myself. That's a lasting impression without too much of a lift on your part. Do that.
so true, so true. All right,
Mhm.
one more question. Are there opportunities for research experience after graduation? And I've got a take on that too after you guys speak.
Yeah, so it would be reaching out to individual faculty members. That would be the mechanism for how you would, because there's no blanket rule. It would have to be faculty member specific. And so, yeah, and if any of you have any questions, Emily, myself, Carla, we are always here to help you too as we begin to think about winding this down. So, Emily.
Yeah, I don't have a ton on the research aspect. I know that I did take cadaver lab once I was in my gap year, and how I did that. Like I worked with Dr. Hireman and everyone that was they helped me direct me, but they said essentially if I was taking another class, then I could take that class too. So I was like a teaching assistant and did that. So you can do things once you graduate. You just kind of have to talk to, like Dr. Merkel was saying, people so they can get you in where you need to get into. I think that Carla has something she wants to add, but before we go, I do need to mention something about GPA because I don't want a bunch of text messages. I don't know who's all in this call, but I'm assuming it's some people that I'm very close with and I don't want them freaking out. So I do want to talk about GPA before we jump off.
Let's do. Oh, okay. Do you want to talk about it now?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and talk about it now. I'll
Okay.
wrap mine up with my final, like, yeah, stuff about career advising. Perfect.
Yeah. So I know the GPA requirements is super, super daunting and scary, but big but, if you meet that minimum requirement, do not think that you can't apply. If you meet the minimum requirement, please apply because you don't know how that application cycle is going to go and you don't know how they're looking at those applications. A lot of schools are now going more holistic. So they're looking at your hours, they're looking at your other experiences. And if you want, if your GPA is lower, work on offsetting in other areas too. Obviously, work to keep that GPA at least the minimum. If not, it would be better if it was higher, but really get those patient contact hours, really get some good experiences because that's really important. I wrote down something from one of the websites that the schools look at. They look at your trends in grades. So if you started off at the beginning of college and things were just not good, they look at how those grades trend, the recent coursework, and then your prerequisites. They look at those, they like calculate different GPAs, like based on prereqs, based on science, the difficulty of the courses that you're in. They look at the course load that you're in, the quality of the school that you're at, like community college versus a 4-year, any graduate work, if you were working full-time while you're in school. So they really do look at a lot of things. So do not think that my GPA is too low, I'm not going to apply. If you meet the minimum, please apply. And then another thing is how CASPA calculates your GPA is they only calculate it once per cycle. So please put in all of your transcripts once you're done with school. I know CASPA opens in April and we want to apply as soon as possible, but that's why I usually say like June, because you want that transcript from your spring courses to be back. You want all those grades, because if you don't put that transcript in, none of those classes count. So please wait until you have your transcripts and they are complete to send them off to CASPA because they are only going to do it once. And then how CASPA calculates your grade is they calculate it off of every course you took, no matter if you retook that course. So if you got a D and then you retook it and you got an A, both of those grades go into the calculation. And if you're going to retake a course, please really put time and effort into that course, because if you retake it and you got a D and then you retake it and you get a B or an A and you can show that you improved that much, that speaks volumes to the school. If you retake that course and you get the same grade or worse, what is that going to tell the school? It's not going to look pretty, and it's not going to teach them that, hey, like, I can do this. I know how to reach out for help. I know how to change my study techniques. And honestly, sometimes that looks better to a school than someone that got all A's, because they want to see that when it gets hard, you can go in, change the way you study, get the help you need, and improve. So that's my GPA spiel. If anyone's in here, you are always free to text me, but I don't want to hear anything about my GPA is too low, because it's not.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
and I
there
put something
anything?
in the chat too. I think this is new. From what I remember, Madison looks at economic circumstances. If you're first gen, there's some there's a priority component to what they're looking at. So check out websites. You might be surprised in a good way. So thank you, Emily Jadin, very much for all
Thank
of
you.
these fantastic insights. Thank you very much, Carla. And if you have any questions, I am happy to answer and point you in the right direction. If I do not know something specific, I will connect the dots for you.
Couple housekeeping things really quick. Again, we'll send out the PowerPoint slides deck, so you have that. So again, so if you were taking notes, we'll have that. Not till tomorrow. So I'm calling a night here shortly. We'll have the recording then too available. And also there's the nest section. So Thursday's general health advising. So it's a broader, if you're not sure where you're thinking about for grad school. Next Monday is then the pre-PT AT program. So physical therapy, athletic training. Next Wednesday, same time frame, pre-med. Also on November 1st, there was a question about research. Jonah Azuls, a current GB student, is going to be talking about his summer internship with the National Institutes of Health. So there'll be an email going out Thursday, Friday. There was one email that went out to the human biology majors. There'll be another one. So there's those different research opportunities that are off campus. Dr. Merkel talked about some of them as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you again to our speakers, Dr. Merkel, Emily, and have a great evening, everyone.
Good night, everybody.